Hello, I'm Hazel Tindall and welcome to this contribution to Shetland Wool Week 2020, and I'm here with Janette Budge.
Hi Hazel, how are you today?
I'm good, thank you. And we're here to speak a pretty bit about Fair Isle. Before we got going, we were speaking about when we first minded doing Fair Isle, and I have no memory of doing Fair Isle at school. But I do mind being surrounded by Fair Isle when I was very young. And at that time, the Fair Isle yokes, and we're both wearing Fair Isle yokes today, were just coming into vogue. So my first memories of Fair Isle was seeing the machine knit bodies like this coming through the machine knitter, and it was our job, or my mum's job, to get Fair Isle yoke into that machine knit, and we got them. They came with the neck machine knitted and the cuffs machine knitted, and all those had to be grafted on. And when we finished, we had something that looked a bit like this. So the cuffs had been added and the neck had been added. So that was my first memory of Fair Isle. Now, what's your first memory of Fair Isle, Janette?
Well, I suppose my first memory of Fair Isle was my mum knitting the yokes, the same as you described. But for my own knitting then at the school, then it was a pair of mittens that we got to knit. The cuffs was made on the knitting machine by the teacher, and then we knitted the rest of it. You can see that my tomb on this one's a bit squint. So yeah, and then we moved on to other things like hats and scarves, and then we did a yoke as well at the school, the body made in the machine. And
your teacher would have been Zena Thompson?
That's right, yeah. She was a good teacher.
Oh, she was an incredible knitter. She could match lace, autumn work, what we call autumn work, and Fair Isle and anything, and a very, really good creative person, and got a lot of work marking. Yeah. So when I was first started to learn Fair Isle, we were on graph books. They were called graph books, so they had squares and lines. So this is actually my mum's one, and this would have been a pattern for a Fair Isle yoke. So it had stars and trees. And one of the things, but if you sit with squared paper and put the dots on, then you're getting that pattern up here before you come to knit it with your fingers.
We do that with the penny markers. Yeah, we do that with the penny markers and get them to dot it out before they start whatever it is they're marking. And then they also understand where the repeat of the pattern is too, much better.
Yeah, I think it's really hard sometimes if you get a chart, as they're called nowadays, and it's all in colour or symbols, and you can't see the shape that you might meant to be marking. I think that's really, really hard.
And it's also harder to change the colours to what you might want, but then you can, if it's just in the black and white, then it's much easier to imagine what colours you would want, but in this row or that row, and alter it to your own design.
Well, yes, because what I always learned was that the white square was the background and the dark square was the pattern. And it didn't matter whether you were using a light colour for the background or a dark colour. But the background colour was always in my right hand. And the pattern colour is always in my left hand, regardless of whether this is a light colour or a dark colour. And so certainly when I started, there was nobody telling me what colours I would use. I looked at the graph pattern and decided, well, I'll have a few rows of this and a few rows of that. And I made some horrendous Fair Isle yokes, but they all got sell. But beauty is in the eye of the beholder. So.
Indeed, yeah. I can't really mind whether we got to choose our own colours. I doubt that we did, but it would have been for like a limited range. You kind whatever clues was there.
Yeah.
But yeah, I doubt we still got to choose certainly the placement of them.
So maybe this is a good time to speak about colour choosing.
Yeah, I
Because
think
we
that would
kind
be useful for folk.
yes, we're naturally got there.
Yeah.
So I'm going to show you 6 of the colours that I've been using. I think you can see them there.
You can send the yoke to Stu and Inu.
This is a cardigan that I'm doing.
A cardigan, oh yes.
So it was somebody else chose the colours. It's no my favourite colours. So I've sort of split them into light. That I'm saying is the 3 light, and then this I decided it was the 3 dark. So when I'm knitting with them, I'm knitting the darkest dark with the darkest light, if that makes sense. Actually, I think I've got that the wrong way round, but I think I did it this way. Yeah. So you want to be shading your pattern colours for light to dark roughly, and at the same time you're shading your background colours. Because the yoke that you're wearing, Janette, is a really good example, because you start it with a dark at the edge and then it's getting lighter in the middle. So the background is getting lighter and the pattern's getting lighter. So that way you can always see the shape of the pattern that you're knitting.
Yeah, and that there's enough contrast between the background and the pattern colour too, to make the pattern stand out.
Yes, for the traditional Shetland knitters, they don't like to see the pattern broken. And that's where the poor use of colour means that you kind see the shape of the pattern. And that was always frowned on.
Yes, I mind that too. Although I don't think I was ever taught that, but it's just something that you knew somehow.
Yeah, yeah. It just defines your eye somehow. Yeah.
And you can see that one very well too, because the pattern really stands out in the one you're wearing.
This one is just, I think there's just 4 colours in it. I've forgotten now, but I think it's just 4. And as I've got older and lazier and don't have an access to a knitting machine, I do the body in double knitting yarn and then the yoke in the jumper weight or spin drift. And that way you make the body a lot quicker. And
that's a good idea.
Yeah, if you get a good basic pattern, it's no hard to change what you put in the yoke, because you have the numbers and so it's easy.
Yeah, no, that's right. And they were saying about the going dark to light or light to dark. I have a couple of the yoke bags that we use for the classes that me and Mum does. We maybe should mention Mum. She was going to join us today, but she wasn't able to. So she's very well, but she just wasn't able to come and do with the new restrictions. So we have like this is all blues, but we've got the pattern where it's going dark to light, and then this one is light to dark. So it's deciding yourself which one you prefer the look of. And I guess the other thing is that we would call it the pattern, but in books then it would be the motif.
Yeah.
And that kind of ties back to what you had with your mum's graph book.
Yeah, it's all patterns. And the other thing that you sometimes see in books, we always speak about piri patterns. We would never ever speak about piris. No. But that's a mistake that's crept into a few books, and that's a pity, because piri is a Shetland adjective that applies to bairns and grain and piri grain of water even. Piri grain of sun.
Yeah.
So,
Or
so it's always
Piricorn night. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's always a piri patron.
Yeah.
Always his patron weight. A piri patron, I would say, maybe goes up to about 5 ging, something like that. 5 or 7 maybe. And anything bigger is that. And in Fair Isle, I think they speak about grunds.
Oh.
That kind of patrons.
And I suppose when a patron that's only maybe 2 or 3 rows might be a pretty muddy patron.
Possibly, yeah.
I don't know if they would have guided that though.
Well, you can have a row of 1 and 1. 1 and 1, that's what my mother called mice teeth.
Oh yes.
That's the only patron that I ever mind. There was a ribbon patron too, which as in RIBBON. What did she call it? Travelling ribbon, you kind how it swirls. Yeah, but no many patrons would have names.
No.
No.
They would be more descriptive names like a zigzag or the oxo, or you can more about the actual shape of the pattern, really, isn't it?
Yeah, some folk doesn't really let them card oxos.
I see. Because it's been more of a descriptive name, then it's no a set name. It's not like nowadays then. What's the name of the one that's wearing the new? Is that the Benigyo?
It is, yeah.
Yeah. So it's not like that kind of a name. It's more just a descriptive of how it looks, isn't it? So some folk with a guide at a tree or some folk with a guide at a fern.
Yeah. It's just how you see it yourself. Yes.
Yeah. And there's been marking on something this last pretty while?
Yes. Yeah. I've been working hard on a cardigan. So this is the centre front, and it's going to be cut open. So I have 8 extra loops, more commonly known as a steek, and I'd never heard of a steek till about maybe 20 years ago, although I'd been doing this extra loops all my life, and I'm going to cut. So I'll show you, because this is one of the things that folk are really worried about is if I can show it very well here. So what I'm aiming for is this pair of loops. It's the same colour. This is what I'm doing. So if I cut a bit, are you seeing it okay?
Yeah, we can see.
Let's see what I'm doing here. And I'm keeping my hand in a hand so that I don't know. Thing.
So there's got the hand between the 2 layers.
Yeah. So this is how it gets cut, and the colours have all been joined at the centre front. So this knots here just get cut off. Yeah.
It's so good that, isn't it? No ends to leave in.
Yes, I have the sleeves to do though.
Oh yes, and that's true.
It needs to be cut open, and then it makes it easier to turn it right sides together to do a shoulder join. I prefer to do a 3-needle bind off. I think it gives a stronger finish. So yes, this is, so that's a cardigan that should be finished before too long, hopefully. Because I have an old jumper. I have a pile of stuff here, but we're not going to get through it all. Where's the jumper going? Yeah, this is the oldest piece of knitting that my mum, that I have. It belongs to my mum. It's not the oldest piece that she ever made, but this was made for my brother.
That's lovely.
1953, and I have no doubt that we all wore it. And I can show you a photo of it being worn for the first time. So that's how I'm wearing it. So
Fits him perfect too.
yeah, well, yes. So this one, it's had a lot of wear, but what's interesting about this one is that it hasn't been made with a stick. It's been, I think you can see there. So it's been made across, not the yarn's knotted together, made across, yarn is brought, knot it, knit it, and then you knot the row of 4. And that's, in Wales they call it brack and eek, which is a really good description. And then when it comes to the neck, there's no much shape into the neck, but she didn't shape it at all as she was marking. It was just knitted straight up, and then she used a needle just to pick up the loops along here, along the side on a slope, and then straight, and then another slope. And then the excess piece of knitting was just cut off, and then it was slip stitched down.
Oh yes.
So it wasn't that she didn't, so she can't that could be cut, but she had the thought to put on the extra loops and cut the armholes. So I don't know when she started doing that. So
well, we're all literally learning as we go along, aren't we?
Well, yeah, there's always new things to learn if you want to.
Yeah.
And because this was a wearing jumper, it wasn't going anywhere special. The ends were just knotted and left. They wouldn't. If we can see it, they weren't even cut really short.
No.
No, and they've survived.
Well, that's it. Yeah.
Jimsy was the oldest teen, and I'm sure that we probably all 4 wore this.
Yeah.
So
it's been well worn then. It just shows you as well how well the wool garments you can wear over the course of time.
No, I think I've done all the speaking, Janette.
That's all right. I'd like to hear you.
What was the Fair Isle waddle, the marking waddle, like when you started marking? Because you started marking a few years after I did. Yes,
well, I suppose it was very much about a hobby. It wasn't anything to do. We never knitted to sell at all. It was just to knit what you fancied knitting, and just to keep your hand in. And Mum was always knitting, so I would tack my sock as well, and things like that. But I can mind your mother and my granny coming over and about the night on a Saturday, and it was such a lovely feeling, everybody sitting marking. Yarning away, a very relaxed atmosphere, and it was good.
Yes, and they made 6 days a week.
Yeah.
Never on a Sunday.
Never on a Sunday, no. No, my father is horrified if I'm knitting on a Sunday now. But I say, well, it's a hobby. It's no work, although it maybe is new. But yes,
I was in my mid-20s before I allowed myself to mark on a Sunday. I said, my hobby, I should be able to practice a hobby on a Sunday. So it was just ingrained.
I know. Oh, well, I was older as that, really. Probably in my 30s before I was knitting on a Sunday. But yeah, it was. I had a spell that I didn't knit Fair Isle, that I just knitted baby clothes and things like that for friends and family and stuff, and then kind of came back to the Fair Isle when I saw something that I in a shop, and then was like, oh, I really like it, and I could make it myself rather as buying it. So that's kind of how it started.
Yes, because when I was growing up, then everybody was marking to sell.
Yeah,
and it was how they put essentials on the table. There wasn't really nobody much hobby marking.
Yeah, no, there was. I mean, my friends really wasn't maken at all. And it's only in the last maybe 5 years that some of my friends are saying, can you remind me how to cast on? Can you teach me how to knit Fair Isle again and things like that. So I have a petty knitting group now with friends of mine that we've been, during the lockdown, we've been doing like a Zoom knitting group and things like that. So that's been very lightsome.
And one of the really lovely things to get involved in was Shetland Petty Makers.
Yeah.
For we could in school as volunteers and help parents that wanted to learn to make. Who knows when that'll start again?
I know, but I've heard for some of the, because it's a small community, you kind some of the mums and dads and things, and some of them has been making in the lockdown because they've not been able to go to their after school activities and things like that. So there has been, you can, if the weather's not been good, then they could, even if it was just plain things, it's still keeping their hand in, even if they're not doing it.
I met two of the lasses that were coming and they're still making, which is good.
It is, and it's very therapeutic, I think, as well. You kind there's a lot of evidence now about stress relieving and things like that. So no, it's been fine, and it's a very strange wool week this year, but it's lovely to be able to connect with folk online somehow.
Well, yes, there's a lovely rhythm we make in Fair Isle, making with the two colours. Because like you said, there was a time that I didn't make much Fair Isle. I was making other things, or maybe I was crocheting, and then I sat down to make a Fair Isle cardigan, and I realised right away I'd missed that rhythm. And I've never stopped making Fair Isle ever since. And one of the things that made me keep making garments was a fear that the skill would vanish.
Yeah.
So I sort of set upon to make one a year. I think I've made about 6 this year, but you have to keep the skill going, otherwise you forget.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, Dive Videos is so good for that too, you can, because it helps to remind folk how to do certain techniques along the way if they've forgotten. The ones that do the Elizabeth.
Yes, I keep going back to watch Elizabeth doing fingers.
Because
if I'm doing gloves, the fingers are the hard thing to get them started right. But I see she's doing a class this week, so I'll maybe.
That's good.
So more folk, but it is briefly in the 50 tips for Shetland knitters. So what's your next project, Janette?
Well, I've got a hat pattern coming out, a couple of hat patterns coming out soon. One is going to be my own self-published, and one with a local wool producer, and I'm going to be doing some online knitting belt classes as well. So that's excellent. I'm looking forward to that. Just a short class. A lot of folk come to Shetland and they'll buy a belt and needles, and then when they get home, they're maybe not quite sure how to get started with it. And I thought it would be a good thing and something different than what's being offered for other knitting tutors. And then we're going to do a live Q&A, I believe, me and Dee on Friday.
Oh, yes. Yes, I'll have to get up to the technology. I like the old technology of wires and a belt. I know,
yes.
The new technology can be a bit of a challenge.
We'll maybe have a practice before then.
So yes, if you have any questions and you can get on to Instagram on Friday, then please think of questions.
8 o'clock.
8 o'clock, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, on
UK time.
UK time, yeah. Yeah.
Okay, well,
so I think we can probably wrap it up for today. And it's thank everybody for watching, and hope you enjoyed our pretty yarn about Fair Isle, and yes, think up your questions for Friday.
Yeah. Thank you, and cheerio.
Cheerio, Inu.